Hey there, Women of Influence. Welcome back to our sneak previews of what's coming up at the Influencers Conference 2020. As you see behind me, we've got a theme going of positions this year, and I'm really excited about what God's got to say. I've been starting to prepare the keynote message for that, and it's coming together and looking fantastic. So I hope you'll be there to enjoy it with us. Today we have Annie Layton with us, and Annie is on team as a coach facilitator with us. And I just want to welcome you, Annie, and thank you for your time today. And would you care to let us know a bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, thanks for inviting me to be here, and I'm so excited about what's going to be happening at the conference. Yeah, so a little bit about myself. So I'm here obviously to be involved with the coaching side, and I was someone that had been receiving coaching for a very long time. And for the 10 years that I started having coaching, I just began to realise the power of what it's like to have a coach, having someone in the corner, someone cheering on for you, someone that can ask the tough questions that you might not ask yourself. I really fell in love with coaching. Did you want to start again?
No, keep going. We'll roll with it.
Yeah, cool. I love that. Yeah, so basically, I've just got a really passion for coaching, and out of my own experience, so I've been in Christian leadership, it felt like forever, probably 30 years, and the last 10 years we were doing a church plant, my husband and myself. So that was a time that I really engaged with coaching more deeply. In the last 2 years, I ran the church by myself with 12 senior pastors. So having that champion for me in the background has made all the difference. And so that really influenced my decision that when we closed the church up, it was just a no-brainer that after being a pastor for all those years, I thought, you know what, I now want to take that role and champion other people and be in their corner and basically just champion them and call out for them to be their best and ask the tricky questions as well, and be that safe person that doesn't know anyone in their world, that can be that refuge that they can run to, but also someone that can also just help them process and find their way and evoke strategy and all that stuff that you work through, problem solving, goals, all that you work through with a coach. So that's kind of what's brought me to the conference on behalf of coaches. I also do supervision, which is a little bit different. That's more of a therapeutic kind of coach, almost with a little bit of a spiritual direction edge to it as well. And so I've studied supervision, and so I do that with pastors particularly, but anyone in ministry open to supervise too. And that's great to also be doing the journey with ministers and pastors. And there's a ministry competency that sits underneath that as well that we work on. But again, just doing that journey with people who are in the trenches or the marketplace of ministry and being able to be there for them, supporting them. So that's kind of how that's got me around to the space of being a coach. And I think also just being aware of how many people in leadership are really lonely and isolated and struggling. And that's a bit of a driver for me as well. There's a lot of leaders with titles and not with titles that just feel a bit lonely, isolated, a bit depressed, that kind of stuff. There's also some leaders, I think, that are, maybe at the end of their careers that would love to do a bit of a job change but can't, or feel a little bit trapped in their roles, or some of them are financially, really struggling. Some don't own homes. Some have got some damage in their families and kids. So there's a lot of stuff going on for leaders. So that also is a little bit of a driver for me to be able to, hey, how can I support you in this part if you're struggling in your role as a Christian leader? So that's kind of a bit about the why. Why coaching? That's why.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've got some personal experience behind that from your own time in ministry.
Yeah. So very much so. So when I started in the old 80s, so that's a bit of a betrayal of my age. I was an intern pastor back in the day, and there was just very few females in Christian ministry or Christian leadership. And we'd go to these meetings, and I used to sort of call it the grey suits meetings, because in my Pentecostal denomination, and I won't mention what it was, everyone was in grey suits, and there was like one or two women. And I was always asked, whose PA are you, or whose secretary are you, or whose wife are you? And it's like you do the internal eye roll. It's like, oh, okay, here we go again. Actually, no, I'm not anybody's PA. And there was always this having to define myself when I was in those environments. And I get it. I understand why, because there was very few women in ministry in those times. And there's some funny times that happened in those days. Like I do remember one day, going to a lunch. And I think on that particular day, I was the only female on a very, very long table of grey suits. And I remember sitting there chatting away, and that was back in the 80s when we all wore shoulder pads. You remember those days, Von? And I think I had the fringe and the perm and all that. And I had the good old little cap sleeve top with the V-neck and the covered buttons. And I remember sitting there just chatting away, you know, to the passers. I looked down the end of the table, and there was one of my colleagues, and he's looking at me with this panicked look on his face, pointing to himself like this. And I was like, and I looked down, and one of my covered buttons had popped open for all of my pre-children breasts were on display for the entire table, and I hadn't even noticed. And there are those moments that if we had some other sisters at the table, I might have been told, or at least had a bit of a laugh, but I think I just died of embarrassment. Like, oh, this is just hard being the only woman in this environment. With my button up, and I think my flushed face probably told the story to everybody else.
Yeah,
you know.
I think that's nightmare material. So many of us women in leadership just fear that happening to us on stage. I remember Christine Kane talking about a time when she leaked because she was breastfeeding and her baby started to cry in the audience, or maybe it was someone else's child even, and she started to leak and, you know, had to go and quickly have a wardrobe change. Yeah, the things that we as women leaders have to deal with, hey?
So true. I think we've all got us through. I remember another time walking off stage, and one of the lovely older women in the church running up and tying a jacket around my waist over my white skirt. You know those moments? We've all had those. So yeah, so I think, you know, I missed those moments back in the day where there was no other sister behind me, or hey Annie, you know. So but no one's thought that's just how the culture was. And look, from that point on, really, the next probably 20 years, things began to evolve and change, which is great. And I had some great bosses. So a lot of it does sit around who's leading you or what part of the community you're part of, you know. But even in that, when I went to apply for my credentials in those seasons, I was strongly advised to not apply for my probationary minister certificate because women don't get those. You need to go for your specialised. And whereas a girlfriend of mine was like, stuff that, I'm going for my probationary. I'm like, you know, why would I ever bow to that? And sadly, she didn't get anything, and I got my specialised, but I wasn't allowed to get my probationary. So now I know those things have changed now, but again, there was certainly still windows and moments of where I was bashing a bit into that misogynistic landscape. But as I mentioned, as the years went by, things began to change and alter, and even for us now, many of us, including yourself, Fauna, key women in key ministry. So that's great that is changing. Yeah, so my journey in ministry has informed my passion and my desire to just get behind other people in leadership and just be there to coach them and help them through. Yeah.
And certainly things have changed and improved on that front, but it's still there. I still talk to sisters in ministry. I'm sure it's in the workplace as well, that they still come up against those resistances and those funny situations where there's awkwardness and embarrassment, just because the feminine aspect of our leadership style and what we bring. I'm really looking forward to us being able to wrestle out some of those things at Influencers as we discuss at small groups and in your coaching sessions too, because we've all got stories to share, and we've all got wisdom and tips on how to avoid those pitfalls and how to just plough on through when we do hit those barriers. Could you share a bit about what your sessions are going to be about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got two. The first one I'm doing is about us increasing our presence in 2020 or 2021, moving on as well. And I think, yes, just to echo what you're saying, Von, you know, we certainly are seeing women, even like in the political landscape at the moment, you know, we've got Gladys and we've got Anastasia and even Jacinta and even like Angela Merkel over in Germany, that women are globally definitely taking more prominence. But there is still some ways to go in the church. And last year I did my own little unofficial survey of women up the east coast of Australia, different ages. I surveyed women from their 20s through to their 60s and 70s, and I had sort of set questions, and I just dug in and just said, hey, these are some of the things I experienced over the last 30 plus years in ministry. Have you experienced those? And in the older age groups, I got the answers that I did expect. Things like I was just the wife, I was the unpaid employee that did all the work. You know, my husband would be invited, you know, we'd be invited to things, but my name wouldn't even be on the invitation, you know, but I was expected to still go. I was not skilled. Then my husband in an area and they'd offer me up, they'd always choose him. And I could regale you with many, many stories of what was shared. And what was sad though in that, Yvonne, was the girls in their 20s and 30s are still having those experiences. And that's what made me sad, because I thought, oh, surely by now, we've got it sorted. And I think what they were saying that made it harder for them was there's an awareness now of not being misogynistic. So I think some of their, I guess, leaders feel that they're not, but still are. So it's very hard to turn the Titanic around if you think you're actually already facing in the new direction. So these young girls were saying, no, that stuff is still there. I still am offered kids ministry or catering. I'm not offered to preach or whatever it is. We are still pigeonholed. So part of one of the coaching sessions I want to do is talking around, this is the stats right now. How do we, as a group, this is part of the group coaching, as we access all the wisdom in the room, how do we wrestle with that, and how do we find our way through changing that culture? So I don't want to give too much more away about that, because I'd love you to come and hear all the stuff and hear what others share. So that's my first one. And the other one I'm going to do is around positioning your voice in leadership. And that's around actually examining your voice itself. So it's funny how, quite often at home, we have no trouble walking in our authority, right? We can certainly be strong. We tell our children what to do. We tell our husbands what to do. We have no trouble with our authority and our voice at home, right? But when we put ourselves in a workplace, if it's a Christian church workplace or a ministry workplace, it's amazing how we don't have that same voice or that same confidence when we're in another environment. And so I want to wrestle that idea about your voice. Why does your voice change? What's behind that? And it's funny too, sometimes even though we might have the confidence, we use our voice in one way at home versus how we use it at the workplace. So what I mean by that is, we've all had friends that when they first had children, I've had different friends. One friend would always used to shout at her kids, like that was just the way she did kid and parenting, she'd shout. And then I had another friend that used to sometimes talk a more of a, baby voice, come on, little, and both of them used their authority. Oh, now come on, don't do that. It was their authority, but their methodology was perhaps needing some work. So to take that authority, where you might use a baby voice with your kids or to be a shouter or whatever it is. So sometimes the vehicle that we use isn't so great. So it's how do we look at our voice? How is that voice used? And how do we take our authority from there into the ministry workplace? So we're going to just wrestle around, what is your voice? What is your confidence like? What's informing your confidence? But also how do you take the way you use your voice at home and use it better in your Christian workplace or ministry workplace? So, what's the posture that sits behind your confidence? What's the thinking behind the way you speak at church or don't speak at church? You got a little bit of a victim mentality? What's the stories you're telling yourself? What's your family background? All those things inform how we bring our voice into our Christian or ministry workplace. So we're just going to play around all that idea around what's behind our voice and our confidence. And again, you don't have to be a parent. Maybe you've got a dog at home and you speak to your dog in a voice. I don't know. There's context for all that, isn't there? But, I'm being facetious, but we can play around it. It's just more about how do you bring your authority and what is your voice like? So that's kind of how we'll work around the other one that I'm going to do.
Powerful sessions, Annie. I am so looking forward to hearing more about them. I'm trying to work out a way to clone myself so I can be at every session at Influencers, because both of yours sound amazing. Here I am with my croaky voice and having to deal with navigating that. And I know I've learned a lot about how I use my voice with that journey. I would love to apply that in the way that you're going to wrestle that out. Sounds fascinating. So ladies, if you're interested in getting some time out and getting some time to focus on things like using your voice for God more effectively, addressing those things that might be holding your voice back and your confidence, you've got a chance to do that with Annie. And also, if you find yourself like me leading teams of women, how to be strategic and work in your organisation to get women's profile raised in today's society. That sounds really exciting too, and I think that's where Influencers' heart is. It's about forwarding women in leadership in a godly way. So again, sign up for her sessions for that. Remember, influencers registration is so affordable this year. It's amazing value for what you'll be getting in the sessions. It starts at $20, and if you want to do the creativity workshops, it increases because you need the materials for that. But please jump in and sign up. There's only limited places for the coaching sessions because they are in the small groups. So make the most of jumping in early and getting your registration in. And we look forward to having you with us at those. Annie, just to finish up, if somebody wants to get in contact with you for some coaching or some supervision, how would they go about reaching you?
Yes, so myself and Kylie, who's also doing some coaching sessions, we're from the Christian Coaching Institute. So if you go on their website, there is a button that you can tap on and to register interest, or just reach out for me that way. And also, or Annie at christiancoachinginstitute.com.au. You can go that way as well. But both Kylie and I, and obviously the Coaching Institute has a plethora of really experienced female and male coaches. So just find me that way. And or if not, personally, I'm on LinkedIn as well. But go through Christian Coaching Institute and you'll find me there. Fantastic.
All right, it's been so great spending this time with you, Annie. You've only made me drool more for what you've got prepared for us at Influencers. So I'm really super looking forward to it now. And we're only just 5 weeks away now. So get those registrations in, girls, and we'll see you there.
Yeah, see you there.